Welcome to the Radfield Home Care Podcast, Episode 2, Winter Wisdom, with the focus today on making plans for a warm and safe Christmas at home with myself, Trudy Meredith, Marketing Manager at Radfield, and I'm joined today by Jackie Gillen, Owner and Director of Radfield Home Care, Wakefield and Dewsbury. So welcome, Jackie.
Hi dear, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So today we would like to share with you some insightful words of wisdom, kindly presented by Jackie, who previous to launching Radfield has dedicated much of her career to the housing and social care sector, working with vulnerable people of all ages. So my first question to Jackie today is that this Christmas is obviously going to be challenging for many of us, as many families aren't going to be able to spend the sort of quality time that they would normally spend with everyone that they love. How do you think this will affect older people, Jackie, living alone?
I think without a doubt, it's definitely going to have an impact, not just on older people, but on everybody. With COVID and all the restrictions and everything that's been put in place, Christmas can be a difficult time anyway. It can trigger happier sort of memories of times in the past, trigger memories of bereavements, or you might have illness or reducing mobility that can all impact on, sort of becoming more socially isolated. And then obviously going into winter, you've got the poor weather, you've got, icy wet conditions, which can limit the amount of time you can get out and about. And then obviously we've as we know with COVID, there's restrictions. You're not allowed to mix with other households. You've got to limit your contacts. So people are going to be feeling a bit more isolated and lonely, definitely, throughout the Christmas period.
Okay, that's great. No, thank you, Jackie. So second question, Jackie, is can you provide sort of any reassurance and tips to families to help their loved ones make this Christmas sort of as enjoyable as possible, really?
Yeah, I think the key thing to remember, is that this isn't forever, thankfully. It's a temporary situation that we all find ourselves in, with COVID and all the restrictions. And it's obviously not ideal, but it's worth it in the long run, to beat COVID. So I would say it's about trying to focus on the positives, and we've all got to try and make the best of it. For me, the key thing is communication. So staying in touch with elderly relatives, making regular contact, making sure people are okay, chatting to them, taking the time to listen and, and support people where you can. You can do that over the phone, but again, nowadays, obviously with social media, you can FaceTime, WhatsApp, all the various different platforms that you can use, which is a brilliant way, of connecting and seeing people. Obviously, it's not as good as getting together, but it's a great sort of middle ground. Also, maybe potentially offering to support elderly relatives with shopping and delivering their food shopping for over the festive period to take that worry and uncertainty away.
Yeah.
If you can, form a Christmas bubble, that's again another option where you would be able to visit elderly relatives, obviously following guidelines, being safe, keeping windows open, following good hand hygiene and social distancing. But again, not everybody's able to do that or will choose to do that, given obviously the increased risks. Another thing is planning something in for the future, something to look forward to, maybe in the summer, a get together that everybody can look forward to once we get through the winter and hopefully beat COVID. And the other thing I would say is about, seeking support if you are worried about an elderly relative, if they're talking to you and telling you that they're feeling isolated. There are organisations out there that can provide support and help to people. Age UK is one of them, that offer a sort of phone service, a friendship service. Again, it could be potentially that you feel they need more structured care or support. And again, there's companies like yourselves that would be able to provide companionship, support, help with shopping, right through to full-on care if that's what's required. So again, it's not being afraid to ask for help if you feel that's needed. So that would really be my sort of top tips.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you very much. So, Jackie, my next question to you is, with us all spending more time at home and what looks to be a harsh winter, actually looking at the forecast this Christmas, can you
Yeah.
provide some sort of guidance on how to stay warm at Christmas and manage the cost of keeping your house sort of warm and cosy throughout the festive period?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the key sort of obvious one is to, take some regular exercise if you can. Now, obviously, not everybody will be able to get out and about, but it's doing what you can, with what you've got. So if you're in your own home, making sure you're moving about as much as possible to keep the blood pumping and keep
Yeah,
you warm. If you can't move out of your chair or whatever, then doing maybe some chair exercises, still again to keep you moving and keep the blood flowing. That'll all help. The other thing is maybe to think about wearing, layers of clothing. So instead of one big thick jumper, wear lots of thin layers, and that can help to keep you warmer. Another good thing is if you're not able to, or you don't want to have to keep getting up to walk to the kitchen to make yourself a drink, get a thermos flask and fill it with some hot drinks, and keep that by your side and keep drinking throughout the day, because that'll help to keep you warm. Another great thing is maybe a hot water bottle, or one of these sort of hand warmers that you can put in the microwave. Or my personal favourite is having a nice snuggly blanket and tucking that all around you to keep out all the drafts and keep you nice and snug. Again, you could maybe think about, like draft excluders and things that can go in front of doorways and gaps to reduce the amount of cold air coming in. Obviously, keeping doors closed when you're in a room so that you're not going to get the drafts. In terms of costs, you could potentially think about maybe turning heating off in rooms that you don't use. So if you've got, spare bedrooms that aren't used, you could turn the radiators off there so you're not paying for heating, which nobody's going to be, getting the benefit from. And that would help to reduce costs. Also, you could potentially think about maybe switching energy providers. A lot of people, and especially elderly, tend to stay loyal to the same provider they've had for a number of years, but that doesn't actually, give you any rewards in terms of loyalty. In terms of cost, your prices are probably going to be higher, whereas if you switch to a different provider, you might get a much better deal, and that's obviously going to help. And lastly, really, just if you are struggling, there is lots of help and support out there for people to access. In our area, which is Wakefield, the council's created an initiative called LEAP, which is Local Energy Advice Partnership, and it's to give everybody that lives in the region help, on how to save money, how to stay warm and healthy this winter.
yeah.
And it's a free service. So I'm sure majority of local authorities will have something similar. And there's also lots of government grants and funding out there for insulation that you could get into your property, if you were eligible. So again, it's about having a little look locally, what's available, contacting your local authority, and getting some advice if you feel that's something that would be useful for you.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, there's some really great tips there. So thank you very much for that. And Jackie, my final question to you is that because older people are more likely to live on their own and are often lonely, they can become sort of target for fraudsters, especially in the festive period. So what advice would you be able to share to ensure that older people and their families sort of stay safe this Christmas?
Well, I did a little bit of research, Trudy, before coming on today, and I was quite interested to read that 43% of older people, so that's over or nearly 5 million people over the age of 65, think they've been targeted by scammers, which is quite a scary statistic. And we all know it is something out there that's happening. I'm sure everybody's had an experience where they've had a phone call and it's not been quite right. It certainly seems to be on the increase. As you know, scams can be committed lots of different ways. They're getting more and more sophisticated with how they do it. They can sound a lot really legitimate, so you have to be really keep your wits about you. I would be saying is always follow your gut instinct. I'm a great believer in that. And if something just doesn't feel right, it's probably right. So make sure you act on it. Never ever give out any personal information. If you've been contacted by somebody you don't know, or somebody saying they're the bank, always err on the side of caution. And what I always do is say, I'll take your name, your contact details, and I'll give you a call back.
Yeah.
And then what I would do is I wouldn't ring their number. I'd actually ring the official number, have a Google or whatever for the bank or whoever it is, and ring them to double check. And usually when I have had a suspicion, it's turned out it's been right, and they've said it hasn't been them. So don't be frightened to challenge or to say, oh, I'll give you a call back, or just say you're busy and you can't speak to them just now, and just get off the phone. Obviously, it can happen not just on phone calls. It can be through the post. It can be over the internet by email, or it could be, face to face on the doorstep.
Yeah.
And obviously, older people living on their own are more vulnerable and more of a target, I would say, which is obviously a bit of a concern. So, if somebody approaches you and asks you for money that you don't know, then obviously I wouldn't be responding to that. That's a bit of a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
If you do get, uninvited approaches, always be cautious. And again, like I've said, contact the company to double check to make sure that it is actually legitimate before you do, if you do decide to let them in or to, proceed with anything.
Yeah.
If you are suspicious or you're not sure, as I said, err on the side of caution. Speak to a neighbour, a friend, family member, get some advice before, proceeding if you are thinking something isn't quite right. And obviously with emails, you can get lots of emails that ask you to click on links, and a lot of these links can be, dodgy or taking you to a fake website, a scam to try and get your personal details or access your bank account. So again, it's just being mindful of that, making sure if you are online that you use strong passwords, you've got your firewall in place to, stop your computer being an easy target.
Yeah.
And really, first and foremost, follow your instincts, always be cautious. And if something doesn't feel right, then, act on it, because you're probably right.
Yeah. No, that's great. There's some really great advice there that you've shared with us today. Thank you, Jackie.
No worries.
Many thanks for your time today, Jackie. We hope this topic has been valuable to all of our listeners.
Oh, thanks, Judy. Thanks for having me. Just to say, I wish everybody that's watching a very Merry Christmas and all the very best for 2021.
Oh, thank you, Jackie. So in the next Winter Wisdom episode, the focus will be on COVID and loneliness and how society today is coping. So we look forward to you joining us all then. Happy Christmas, everyone.